The bacterial infection known today as tuberculosis has gone by many names throughout history. For a large chunk of time in Western Europe, it was called consumption, a name that stemmed from the fact that the disease slowly wasted the afflicted person away. This is AnthroPawlogy Unearthed, and I'm Lachlan Vester. Now, you may be wondering, Lachlan, why would you want to research and produce a podcast about tuberculosis? And to that I say, one, you need to mind your own business. And two, I read a really good book recently, that book being Everything is Tuberculosis by John Green. I would gladly recommend it to any and everyone, even if you have no particular affection for infectious disease literature, which, quite frankly, is a niche that I now live in. Where was I? Oh yeah, tuberculosis. TB has a laundry list of symptoms. Some of its greatest hits include fever, chills, loss of appetite, and weight loss. That last one is like a direct result of the aforementioned appetite loss. Remember, it's called consumption, so it consumes you. Your body is so starved of nutrients that it begins to eat itself to survive. Somehow, this grotesque process was weirdly romanticized in the 18th and 19th centuries, especially in women. The thin, pale, glassy-eyed look of a TB patient was considered attractive. Like, seriously, being gaunt was, like, in fashion. TB was also seen as the disease of the creatives. Like, it traded your physical form for poetic genius or artistic creativity. People genuinely thought that TB could make you better at writing a sonnet. Now, you're probably thinking, this is really disturbing and fascinating, but why is this like a Western Europe thing? And to that I offer the all-purpose answer to an upsetting number of historical questions. Racism. Back then it was widely believed, by many, if not all white people, that TB was the disease of the whites for the whites. Yes, really. While this is so obviously false, try explaining reason to a 19th century European aristocrat, or, a Facebook or Twitter comment section. So, TB spreads pretty freely in cramped and unsanitary conditions. Think urban tenements, prisons, or ironically, sanatoriums. That makes it all the more important for staff in those facilities to have access to proper PPE. Spoiler alert, they didn't historically, especially not in impoverished areas, and in many cases, they still don't. Now, all of us are pretty familiar with respiratory infection prevention thanks to the pandemic of 2020. Masks, hand washing, air circulation, the whole shebang. But back in TB's heyday, germ theory hadn't even been invented yet, so people were out here guessing pretty badly. One of the most popular theories was the miasma theory, or the belief that noxious air caused disease. And while obviously this is incorrect, although half points for the air part, I guess, it was somehow better than the humorous theory of the Middle Ages, which blamed the illness on an imbalance of black bile, yellow bile, blood, and phlegm. Phlegm does show up later, though, so stay tuned. Miasma theory reigned supreme for centuries, but eventually lost its crown to science. In the 19th century, Robert Koch publishes postulates that advanced germ theory to the point that people finally said, hey, wait a minute, tiny organisms might be doing this, which, shocking. TB is a bacterial infection. It's aerobic, which means it thrives in an oxygen-rich environment, like your lungs. The bacteria that causes it, Mycobacterium tuberculosis, reproduces really slowly. We're talking once every 16 to 20 hours, compared to other bacteria that's practically glacial. This makes TB difficult to detect early and very, very hard to treat. TB also has a lipid-rich cell envelope, think of it like armor, which makes it highly drug-resistant. This is one of the biggest challenges healthcare workers face when treating TB, especially in resource-poor settings. Now, let's talk testing. Diagnosing TB is complicated and it is very expensive. If you want early, accurate results, you're going to be spending a lot of money. I'll walk you through the 3 most common testing methods, ranked from meh to please let me see a real doctor. First up, we're going to start with the please let me see a real doctor, which is the chest radiograph, also known as basically just a chest x-ray. This is the TV equivalent of saying, good enough for government work. It looks for lung scarring and the infamous tubercles, which are only present in an active late-stage case of TB. This means that chest x-rays are almost useless for early detection, but guess what? They're cheap, so governments love them, especially in those low-income areas where expensive treatment is too much of a load for the government to bear. The next test is the Mentot test. This one's a little less archaic. It involves injecting a small amount of tuberculin into the forearm and waiting 48 to 72 hours. If your body reacts, congratulations, you've met TB before. But even this test has its problems. People with HIV can get false negatives. People with heavy TB can get false negatives. And honestly, it's almost impressive how frequently and miserably this test can fail. A little personal aside here. My parents actually had this test done when they applied to college. Neither of them had TB nor had come in contact with TB. It just was interesting to me that this was the test that the colleges decided would be best. And I think that's mostly because it's quick compared to the next test, which is a full microbiological study, which microbiological studies are the gold standard. You take a sample of sputum, which is basically your mucousy spit, and grow a culture from it. This process takes several weeks due to the slow reproductive rate of TB, but is the most definitive way to detect TB, and of course, the most expensive. Now, you may be asking, Lachlan, how do we keep TB from spreading through our communities? Great question. The answer, of course, being public health. Contact tracing, education, isolation protocols, vaccines. All of these are key. But here's the outrageous part. There is only one TB vaccine, and it's not even that great. Why? Because TB is most common in impoverished areas, and pharmaceutical companies see little profit in improving a vaccine for people who can't afford it. Which, not to get too ghost hunter about this, feels like a one-way ticket to hell to me. Now, we've had a bit of a heavy time talking about testing and public health. Let's do something a little more fun. Let's use our imaginations. Imagine it's 1912. You're a patient in a mountain sanatorium. This place is much less of a hospital and more like a prison, but with better views. The treatment, not so much medical as it is don't move and hope you stop dying. Doctors believe rest, rich food, and just staying alive is the cure to TB at this time. So you lie still on a balcony in the freezing cold while a nurse insists the fresh air will save you. You drink gallons of milk, you journal, you write poems, you draw, because TB is the disease of creatives. Days turn to weeks, weeks into months. For some people, those months turn to years. You start to wonder if you'll ever leave this place, or if you'll be another fading photograph in a forgotten patient record. This was the reality for so many people trapped in the global sanatorium system. While it might seem like a distant, old-timey tragedy, for people in the global south or marginalized communities in the global north, this is still happening. But hey, let's not end on a note of righteous despair, because there is hope in the fight against TB, if you know where to look. TB is treatable. TB is preventable. When healthcare systems are functional, which is sometimes, public health programs like vaccination, contact tracing, and education are working. Slowly. The progress is glacial, but glacial is still moving forward. And there are researchers and there are advocates working tirelessly to develop better solutions. Let's zoom out. The story of TB isn't about a disease. It's about poverty, inequality, and human behavior. It's about how we respond to invisible threats. Sometimes with fear, sometimes with brilliance, and sometimes spectacularly bad ideas. So why make a whole podcast episode about TB? Because understanding diseases like TB isn't just memorizing symptoms or ranking tests by price tag. It's about seeing the whole system, history, culture, economics, and yes, racism. It's about paying attention to what we choose to ignore. Because if we don't talk about it, TB won't remain a ghost of the past. It'll keep haunting our future. AnthroPawlogy Unearthed is a podcast from WKNC 88.1 FM HD1 HD2, Raleigh, North Carolina. The theme music is produced by Samuel White. I'm Lachlan Vester, your host, and I'll see you next time.